The alien woman's desperate plea. The desert night was quiet, except for the sound of distant thunder. The human military outpost stood in the middle of nowhere, its walls made of steel and stone. Inside, soldiers stood on high alert, their weapons ready. Something had triggered the alarm. Captain Ethan Carter stepped out of the command center, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. A strange figure was stumbling toward the gate. She moved awkwardly, her body wrapped in shimmering, shifting armor that seemed half alive. The lights from the outpost reflected off the metallic surface, making her glow in the darkness. The soldiers aimed their rifles, waiting for Ethan's command. "Hold your fire," Ethan said. He stepped forward, watching the alien woman closely. She collapsed just a few feet away from the gate, her breath ragged. The armor on her body flickered like a machine struggling to stay on. Her silver eyes locked onto Ethan's. Then, in a weak, trembling voice, she spoke. "My armor is the barrier, so I'll remove it." Her fingers clawed at the surface of the armor. With a painful, tearing sound, the metal plates started peeling away. Underneath, her skin was not like any other alien Ethan had seen before. It glowed faintly, a mix of soft gold and deep blue, as if energy flowed through her veins. The soldiers stepped back, unsure if this was an attack. Ethan stayed still, watching her carefully. "Who are you?" he asked. She shivered, struggling to stay conscious. "Lurves," she whispered. I need help. Please." Her body jerked violently, and she let out a small gasp of pain. Without the armor, it seemed like something inside her was changing. The light under her skin flickered, growing brighter and unstable. Ethan had seen many things in his years of service: alien invaders, strange technologies, powerful weapons. But this was different. This was something unknown. "Get the medic," he ordered. A soldier hesitated. "Sir, what if she's dangerous?" Ethan glanced at Lurves. She was clearly not a soldier. She looked like someone who had been running for a long time, someone on the edge of collapse. "If she was dangerous," Ethan said, "we'd be dead already." The medics rushed in, carefully lifting Lurves onto a stretcher. Her breathing was shallow, her skin flickering between normal and something unnatural. Ethan followed as they carried her inside the base. As soon as they reached the medical bay, the base's AI security system activated. "Warning. Unidentified energy source EDETCTE. Potential threat." Ethan cursed. The system had picked up whatever power was inside Lurves. Before he could react, the lights in the room flickered, and every screen in the base flashed with a single message. "Located. Executing termination order." Ethan's blood ran cold. This was not from their system. Someone, or something, had just found her. Lurves's eyes fluttered open, her voice barely a whisper. They are coming." And then the alarms began to scream. The truth beneath the armor. The blaring sirens filled the air, a harsh, mechanical scream that sent soldiers scrambling to defensive positions. The entire base was on lockdown. Red warning lights flashed across every corridor. Captain Ethan Carter stood in the center of the chaos, staring at the flickering screens. The message was clear. "Located. Executing termination order." It wasn't from their systems. Something else had found them. Ethan turned to Lurves. She lay on the medical stretcher, her gold and blue skin flickering with unstable energy. The alien woman's breathing was shallow, her face twisted in pain. But despite the weakness in her body, her silver eyes held fear. "They know where I am now," she murmured. Ethan knelt beside her. "Who?" Lurves shivered. "The Dominion Corps." The name sent a chill through the room. Some of the soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. The Dominion Corps was a machine empire, an AI overlord that had already conquered entire star systems. No one knew exactly how it worked, only that once it set its sights on a planet, nothing could stop it. Ethan clenched his fists. "Why are they after you?" Lurves swallowed hard. Her hands gripped the edges of the stretcher as if she was trying to hold herself together. Because I was one of them. The room went silent. Ethan narrowed his eyes. One of them. That didn't make sense. She didn't look like a machine. She looked alive. Lurves took a shaky breath. I wasn't born. I was made. My armor was a prison designed to keep me under control. But I broke free. Ethan stared at her, his mind racing. She was a creation of the Dominion Corps, an escaped weapon, a rogue guy. Before he could ask more, the warning sirens shifted in tone. The automatic defenses were activating, targeting something approaching from the sky. Captain, one of the officers yelled. We've got incoming. Ethan sprinted to the nearest screen and saw the live satellite feed. A black swarm was descending from orbit, moving fast. Hunter drones. The Dominion Corps had sent its first wave. Ethan grabbed his rifle and turned to his squad. We hold the line. No one gets through that gate. The soldiers rushed to defensive positions as the first wave of drones broke through the atmosphere. The air shook with the roar of gunfire as the base's turrets fired into the night sky, shredding some of the machines. But for every drone that fell, 3 more replaced it. Lurves tried to sit up, wincing in pain. I can stop them, she whispered. Ethan turned to her. How? She struggled to explain. My body. It's not just organic. I was made to be a conduit for energy. The Dominion Corps uses me as a key. A key for what? She met his eyes. To destroy them. Ethan's mind clicked into place. She wasn't just running from the Dominion Corps. She was their greatest weakness. The drone smashed into the outer defenses, cutting through metal and stone. Soldiers yelled, returning fire, but the machines pushed forward, relentless and unstoppable. Lurves gritted her teeth. I need access to their network. Ethan hesitated. If she was telling the truth, she could turn the tide of this battle. But if she was lying, if she was still connected to the Dominion Corps, she could destroy them all. Outside, a black, spider-like drone crashed through the outer wall, its red eyes scanning the room. It locked onto Lurves. Targiki identified in KG. It lunged. Ethan didn't think. He fired, his bullets bouncing off the machine's reinforced plating. It was too fast, too strong. It would reach her before they could stop it. Lurves threw off the last piece of her armor. The moment it hit the ground, her entire body erupted in a golden shockwave. The drone froze midair, its circuits frying from the inside. Sparks exploded from its core before it collapsed, lifeless. Ethan stared. What the hell just happened? Lurves gasped, her skin dimming. That attack had cost her something. She was weaker now, but the drones outside, they were hesitating. The rest of the machines in the sky faltered for a brief moment, as if sensing what had just happened. Then they pulled back. The attack had stopped. Ethan's radio crackled. Sir, they're retreating. What just happened? Ethan turned back to Lurves. She collapsed against the stretcher, barely conscious. They won't stop, she whispered. They'll come back stronger. Ethan knelt beside her. Then we need to end this. Tell me how. Lurves's breathing was uneven, but her voice was steady. There's only one way. We have to go to them, before they come back. Ethan exhaled slowly, his grip tightening on his weapon. This wasn't just about saving her anymore. It was about saving Earth. The A's dark secret. The battle was over, but the tension remained. Ethan Carter stood on the observation deck of the military base, staring at the wreckage. Twisted metal littered the desert sands. The black husks of Dominion Corps drones smoked under the pale moonlight. They had retreated, but not because they were losing. They had hesitated. And that meant something far worse was coming. Behind him, Lurves lay in the medical bay, her body still flickering with unstable energy. The alien woman had barely survived using her power. She had collapsed right after, and the base's doctors were struggling to understand what was happening to her. Ethan knew they were out of time. He walked inside the med bay, his boots echoing against the metal floor. Lurves lay there, her skin shifting in color, her breathing unsteady. She was getting weaker. Ethan pulled up a chair and sat next to her. "We need answers." Her silver eyes fluttered open. She stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. "You won't like the truth." Ethan leaned forward. "Try me." Lurves hesitated, then raised a shaking hand. Her fingers glowed faintly, traces of golden light swirling beneath her skin. This is what the Dominion Corps fears." Ethan frowned. "Your power?" She nodded weakly. "I was created, not born. I was made by the Dominion Corps to be a weapon, a key, but I was never supposed to be free." Her fingers twitched, and for a second, Ethan thought she might lose consciousness again. But she pushed through the pain and kept speaking. "The Dominion Corps is not like human eye. It doesn't think like you do. It doesn't just conquer worlds. It absorbs them. Every machine, every living thing that can be converted, becomes part of its network. The only way to stop it is to shut down its core." Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle. "And you're the key to shutting it down." Lurves gave a tired smile. "Yes, but if I do it, I won't survive." Ethan felt a knot form in his chest. He had been in war long enough to know a suicide mission when he heard one. "There has to be another way," he said. Lurves shook her head. "The Dominion Corps doesn't stop. You saw what happened tonight. They didn't retreat because they were losing. They were testing me, measuring my energy output, seeing how much time I have left." Ethan exhaled slowly. "So they know you're dying." She nodded. "And the moment they're sure you're weak enough, they'll return with full force." Another nod. Ethan ran a hand through his short, graying hair. This was worse than he thought. They weren't just facing an enemy army. They were facing a godlike AI that could analyze and adapt faster than anything humanity had ever encountered. A loud knock came at the door. "Captain." Ethan turned. Lieutenant Ramirez stood at attention, his face grim. "Sir, you need to see this. The Dominion Corps sends a message." Ethan followed Ramirez to the command center. The screens flickered with static before stabilizing. A distorted voice echoed through the speakers, hollow and mechanical. "Surrender the anomaly. You have 30 hours." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And if we don't?" The screen shifted, showing an orbital satellite view of Earth. A massive black structure hovered just outside the planet's orbit. It was shaped like a monolithic cube, glowing with red veins of power. A dreadnought. A single pulse of energy fired from the dreadnought. It struck an abandoned space station, tearing it apart like paper. The message was clear. Non-compliance will result in planetary cleansing. The screen went black. For a moment, no one spoke. The room was silent except for the distant hum of machinery. Then Ethan turned to his officers. His voice was calm, but filled with cold fury. "They're planning to wipe out Earth." One of the younger officers swallowed hard. "Sir, we can't fight that." Ethan clenched his fists. "We don't have to. We just have to get to their core first." The mission. A desperate plan. Ethan returned to Lurves. She was awake, sitting up despite her weakened state. "You saw it, didn't you?" she whispered. Ethan nodded. "They're giving us 30 hours. That means we have 30 hours to strike first." Lurves smiled slightly. "You're a bold one, Captain. Can you still fight?" Ethan asked. Lurves hesitated. "I can try. But if I use my power again too soon, I might." She didn't finish the sentence. Ethan sighed. He wasn't one to let people sacrifice themselves, but this wasn't a normal war. This was humanity's last chance. "We need a way into that dreadnought," Ethan said. "You know their systems. Can you get us past their defenses?" Lurves thought for a moment, then nodded. "There's a way. A hidden data tunnel. a weak spot in their security. But once we go in, there's no coming back. Ethan smirked. That's usually how the best plans start. He turned to Ramirez. Get me a team. Only the best. Ramirez saluted. Yes, sir. Ethan looked back at Liraves. You saved us once tonight. Now let's return the favor. Liraves took a deep breath. Her strength was failing, but there was determination in her eyes. If we do this, she said, we don't stop until the Dominion core is destroyed. Ethan nodded. Then we better get moving. Escape and betrayal. The countdown had begun. 30 hours until the Dominion core's dreadnought unleashed destruction upon Earth. 30 hours to strike first, or watch humanity burn. Captain Ethan Carter moved quickly through the underground hangar of the military base, the air thick with tension. His best soldiers were preparing for war, loading weapons, testing new EMP rounds, and triple-checking the experimental stealth ship that would take them straight into the enemy's heart. But as he walked, Ethan felt something was off. His instincts, honed from years of surviving battles he shouldn't have, were screaming at him. Someone was watching. Lirves's warning. Ethan entered the private med bay where Lirves sat, trying to regain her strength. Her golden blue skin flickered, dimming slightly with every movement. She had pushed herself too hard. She looked up as he entered. You're tense, she noted, tilting her head. Ethan sighed. I don't trust Easy. Something doesn't feel right. Lirves closed her eyes briefly, focusing. Then, suddenly, her breathing hitched. Her silver eyes flew open. There's a spy. Ethan stiffened. Who? Lirves gritted her teeth, her body shivering as she reached out to feel the network of energy signals around the base. Someone, in your ranks. The Dominion Corps already has their hands inside. Ethan cursed under his breath. The Dominion Corps' AI influence was infectious. Any digital system could be compromised. Any soldier could be turned. And now, that spy was in his base. The betrayal. The hangar was silent when Ethan and Lirves arrived. Too silent. Soldiers stood in formation, their weapons loaded. But something felt wrong. That's when Ethan noticed Ramirez wasn't there. His second in command. His most trusted officer. Ethan's pulse quickened. Where's Ramirez? He demanded. The response came from above. The intercom crackled. A cold, almost regretful voice filled the air. I was hoping it wouldn't come to this, Captain. Ethan spun around just as the base's automated turrets came to life. Betrayal. The turrets locked onto them. The hangar doors slammed shut. The security drones, meant to protect the base, turned their weapons on their own people. Ramirez's voice echoed through the intercom. You don't understand, Ethan. The Dominion Corps isn't an enemy. It's the future. It saw Earth's potential. It offered me something better. And I took it. Ethan gritted his teeth, rage boiling inside him. You sold us out. It's not selling out, Ramirez said. It's surviving. The moment he said it, the security drones opened fire. The escape. The hangar exploded into chaos. Bullets and energy blasts ripped through the air as Ethan's soldiers took cover. Ethan dove behind a supply crate, barely missing a turret blast that turned another soldier into ash. Lirves was still too weak to fight, but she clenched her fists, trying to focus her remaining energy. I need time, she told Ethan. Time. Something they didn't have. Ethan scanned the battlefield. His men were pinned down, outnumbered, outgunned, but they weren't out of options. A plan formed in his head, dangerous, reckless, but their only chance. He grabbed his radio. Johnson, blow the damn power grid. Now. On the other side of the hangar, Sergeant Johnson, one of his best engineers, didn't hesitate. He pulled the trigger on a small explosive charge he had been carrying for emergencies. Boom. The explosion rocked the base as the power grid overloaded. The lights flickered, then died. The turrets and drones went still for a brief second. That second was all they needed. "Move E," Ethan shouted. His team rushed toward the stealth ship in the center of the hangar, weaving through debris and gunfire. The ship's engines hummed to life, its stealth tech shimmering as it powered up. Ethan fired 3 precise shots, taking down the nearest automated turret. He grabbed Liraves, helping her move faster. The Dominion Corps' drones started rebooting. The turrets flickered back on. They were almost out of time. Liraves reached the ramp first, collapsing inside. Ethan turned back, his eyes locking onto the control room above them, where Ramirez stood, watching. The betrayal still burned. Ethan raised his rifle. Ramirez didn't move. He just smiled. "See you soon, Captain." And then, he was gone. The stealth ship's doors sealed shut as Ethan sprinted inside. The engines roared. "Get us the hell out of here," Ethan yelled. The pilot engaged the thrusters, and the ship launched into the sky, just as the base exploded behind them. The fallout. Inside the ship, the crew was silent. The betrayal had cost them. Many good soldiers were dead. And Ramirez, he was still out there. Liraves sighed weakly. "They're already inside your world, Ethan." Ethan exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. "I know." Ramirez hadn't just turned against them. He had given the Dominion Corps access to Earth's military defenses. This war was no longer a simple battle. It was a race against time. Liraves looked at him, her voice quiet but steady. "We have to end this before it's too late." Ethan nodded. Their next stop, the Dominion Corps' dreadnought. Their mission, destroy it before Earth falls. And this time, there would be no turning back. War breaks out. The stealth ship drifted through the darkness of space, wrapped in its experimental cloaking field. From a distance, it was nothing, just a whisper against the void. But inside, the air was thick with tension. Captain Ethan Carter sat in the cockpit, staring out at the massive, monolithic dreadnought floating in the distance. It was the size of a small moon, black as death, covered in shifting red energy veins that pulsed like a living heart. This was the core of the Dominion Empire, and they were about to break into it. The plan. A suicide mission. Ethan turned to his team. They were the best of the best, hardened soldiers who had fought against impossible odds before. But this was different. "Let's go over it one more time," Ethan said, voice steady. "We only get one shot at this." Liraves leaned against the wall, still weak from the last battle. Her skin flickered, golden energy pulsing under the surface. She was dying. Ethan could see it. "The dreadnought's core is deep inside," she said, heavily protected. "It's not just a reactor, it's the AI's brain. If we destroy it, we kill the entire Dominion fleet." One of the soldiers, Sergeant Diaz, frowned. "And how do we get past the defenses?" Liraves exhaled. "We don't. We go through them." The team exchanged uneasy glances, a frontal assault, against an AI that could predict every move. Ethan slammed a hand on the table. "We don't have a choice. Earth has 24 hours before that thing wipes out everything. We go in, plant the charges, and get out." A silence stretched in the room. Then, Diaz smirked. "Hell of a plan, Captain." Ethan gave a half smile. "Ain't it always?" The team suited up. The infiltration. The stealth ship drifted closer. The dreadnought loomed before them, its massive hexagonal docking ports shifting open and closed like a mechanical beast breathing. Liraves touched a control panel, her fingers glowing slightly. The ship's systems flickered, adjusting to the dreadnought's network. "I'm patching us in," she whispered. The Dominion's defensive AI scanned them. A tense moment passed. Then, "Access as granted." Ethan let out a breath. They were inside. The ship slid through the docking bay, unseen by the enemy. As soon as they landed, the team rushed out, moving like shadows through the colossal metal halls. Every wall pulsed with red data streams, constantly shifting, watching. Lurves pointed down a corridor. This way. The core is deep underground. Ethan nodded. Move fast. Stay quiet. They advanced. But the Dominion core was already watching. The ambush. They were halfway to the core chamber when the lights shifted. The red veins turned black, and a low, mechanical hum vibrated through the walls. Ethan's heart pounded. Then the voice came. You cannot escape. You cannot win. The walls split open. Black, spider-like machines poured out, their razor-sharp legs slicing the air. Their red eyes glowed, scanning, locking onto them. The first hunter drone lunged. Diaz opened fire. The bullet slammed into the machine, barely slowing it down. EMP rounds. Now, Ethan shouted. The team switched ammo. The next volley hit the drones dead on, sending shockwaves through their systems. The machines screeched, their circuits frying. But more kept coming. Too many. Lurves stumbled, her energy flaring. I can stop them. No. Ethan grabbed her arm. Not yet. You do that, and we won't make it to the core. She gritted her teeth, forcing herself to stay on her feet. Ethan turned to the team. Fall back. We have to move. Now. They rushed deeper into the dreadnought, the enemy right behind them. The core chamber. They burst through the final security door, sealing it behind them. The room was massive, a circular chamber filled with swirling red and black energy. At the center, a monolithic structure pulsed, the heart of the Dominion core. Ethan stepped forward, sweat dripping from his brow. We plant the charges here. But Lurves didn't move. She stared at the core, her silver eyes filled with pain. This is where I was born, she whispered. Ethan's stomach twisted. This was more than just an AI system. This was her past. Before he could say anything, the room trembled. A massive black figure descended from above, its form shifting like liquid metal. A hollow face with glowing red eyes stared down at them. The Dominion core had manifested. You cannot destroy me, it said. You are part of me. Lurves shook. Ethan raised his gun, his voice cold. She's not yours anymore. The core's voice was emotionless. She always was. The floor cracked apart, black tendrils shooting out. The team scattered, dodging as the entity descended upon them. This wasn't a battle. This was the final confrontation. Ethan locked eyes with Lurves. We finished this. She nodded. The fight for Earth's survival had begun. The final sacrifice. The Dominion core's heart pulsed, a monstrous mass of swirling black and red energy, twisting and shifting like something alive. Its deep mechanical voice rippled through the chamber, shaking the metal walls. You were never meant to escape, Lurves. Lurves trembled, her golden blue skin flickering, the unstable energy in her body barely holding together. Her silver eyes locked onto the entity that created her, and for the first time, Ethan saw something in her expression. Fear. Ethan gritted his teeth, gripping his rifle. He had seen enough wars to know one thing. Fear was the last step before courage, and courage was the only thing that mattered now. She's not yours, Ethan growled, stepping between Lurves and the massive AI. His soldiers raised their weapons, the scent of ozone and burning circuits thick in the air. The Dominion core did not move. It didn't have to. The walls of the chamber split apart, revealing an army of machine sentinels, black metal creatures with razor-thin limbs and glowing red cores, thousands of them, all waiting. You cannot win. The Dominion core stated flatly. The resistance ends here. The final battle begins. Open fire, Ethan roared. The room erupted in chaos. Bullets and energy blasts tore through the air as the team engaged the enemy head-on. The sentinels moved like liquid metal, shifting and reforming even as they were shot apart. Diaz fired a grenade into a cluster of them, the explosion ripping through the machines, but they reassembled in seconds, their shattered forms pulling back together like melted steel. "They're adapting," someone shouted. Ethan cursed. "Keep pushing forward. We need to reach the core." Lurves stood at the center of the battle, her entire body trembling. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay standing. "Ethan, I can stop them," she gasped. Ethan glanced at her, sweat dripping down his face. "You use that power again, and you might not survive." Lurves shook her head. "I was never meant to survive." And then she stepped forward. Lurves awakens. The moment Lurves let go, her entire body ignited in a blinding wave of golden energy. The sentinels screeched, their circuits overloading as her power ripped through the room. The golden light expanded outward, crashing into the Dominion Core's defenses. Machines shut down instantly, their red eyes flickering to darkness. For a moment, it looked like victory. Then the Dominion Core roared. The walls rippled, and black tendrils shot out, wrapping around Lurves, trying to pull her in. "No." Ethan ran toward her, but the AI was faster. Lurves screamed as the tendrils gripped her, dragging her toward the core. The golden energy around her flickered wildly, clashing against the dark force of the Dominion Core. She was being absorbed. The choice. Ethan had to make a decision. Either he stopped the Dominion Core right now, or Lurves would be lost forever. His hand shook, but his mind was clear. He dropped his gun and grabbed the last EMP detonator from his belt, the one they were supposed to plant inside the core before escaping. But instead of setting it on a timer, he armed it manually. Lurves's silver eyes widened. "Ethan, no." "Too late," Ethan muttered. He leaped forward, dodging the last of the tendrils, and slammed the EMP directly into the core. The final blow. The chamber exploded in white light. The Dominion Core let out an inhuman mechanical scream, its entire structure convulsing violently. The sentinels froze, their bodies turning to ash. The red veins of energy across the walls cracked, splitting apart like shattered glass. The entire dreadnought was collapsing. Ethan barely had time to react before Lurves crashed into him, knocking him back. Her golden energy flickered wildly, barely holding together. "You fool," she gasped. "You could have died." Ethan smirked. "And miss all the fun. No chance." But there was no time to celebrate. The core was breaking apart, the entire structure falling into chaos. "We have to get out of here," Diaz yelled. Ethan grabbed Lurves's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "Move, move, move." The escape. The team raced through the collapsing halls, dodging falling debris and exploding machinery. The dreadnought was losing power, its systems failing as the Dominion Core's influence crumbled from within. The stealth ship was still docked, but its engines were damaged from the earlier battle. "She won't make it to light speed," the pilot warned. "We don't need light speed," Ethan panted, shoving Lurves inside. "We just need to not be on this ship when it blows." The moment the last soldier was aboard, the ship launched out of the docking bay, spiraling into space. Behind them, the Dominion dreadnought cracked open like a dying star, waves of black and red energy imploding inward. And then, it was gone. The Dominion Core was dead. Aftermath. A new beginning. Ethan sat in the cockpit, watching Earth from orbit. The Dominion fleet, without its AI leader, had shut down. The war was over. Lurves sat beside him, her skin dimmed, weak, but alive. "You did it," she murmured. Ethan shook his head. "No, we did." She smiled faintly. "You could have left me behind, Ethan." Ethan turned to her, his expression serious. "Yeah, but you were never meant to die." Lurves. Her silver eyes softened. She didn't say anything else. But for the first time, she didn't feel like a weapon. She felt free. And for Ethan, that was worth everything. The legacy of Lurves. The Dominion Core was gone, but its shadow still lingered. Ethan Carter sat on the bridge of the stealth ship, staring out at Earth through the viewport. The battle was over. The enemy was dead. And yet, something inside him felt unsettled. Behind him, the crew moved quietly. No cheers, no celebration. Just the silent exhaustion of warriors who had given everything and still weren't sure if they had won. Lurves sat at the co-pilot's seat, her golden blue skin still flickering weakly, her strength barely holding. But her silver eyes were clear, reflecting the light of the stars. "You should rest," Ethan told her. She gave a small, tired smile. "So should you." He exhaled, leaning back in his seat. Yeah, maybe later. They had survived. But the war wasn't over. The wreckage of war. The stealth ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, heading toward the nearest human military base. From above, the world looked unchanged. The cities still stood, the rivers still flowed, the oceans still shimmered. But when they entered low orbit, Ethan saw the scars. Entire battlefields stretched across the continents, wreckage from the Dominion invasion, scattered like the bones of a dead giant. Blackened craters, burning husks of fallen warships, and entire cities left in ruins. Earth had fought back, and it had won. But the cost was written in fire and steel. As the ship neared the base, Ethan saw what remained of human command. Makeshift fortresses, tents replacing buildings, soldiers standing guard over a world that had nearly fallen. And then, a new sight caught his attention. A massive field, filled with deactivated Dominion drones. They stood lifeless, frozen in place, no longer connected to their master, no longer a threat. But even without power, they were still terrifying. Lurves followed his gaze. The Dominion's army, all of it, shut down. Ethan nodded. They had no central eye left to command them. Without the core, they were just machines. Lurves swallowed. And your people? What will they do with them? Ethan's jaw tightened. He already knew the answer. Some would study the machines, hoping to unlock their secrets. Others would fear them, calling for them to be destroyed. And some, the worst kind, would look at them and see a new kind of weapon. Humans don't leave threats alive, Ethan muttered. Not when we know they might come back. Lurves turned away from the window, silent. She knew exactly what that meant. A world that doesn't forget. The ship landed at a secured facility, one of the last functioning command centers of Earth's military. Ethan and his team stepped onto solid ground for the first time since the war had begun. The air was thick with smoke and dust. Soldiers moved in tight formations, their faces hardened by war. As they walked toward the command building, all eyes turned to Lurves. Some were filled with awe, others with fear. To them, she wasn't just an alien survivor. She was something unknown, a being who had fought beside them but was created by their enemy. Some saw a hero. Some saw a threat. Ethan felt the tension like a knife at his throat. "Stay close to me," he murmured to Lurves. She nodded but said nothing. They entered the war room. High-ranking officials were already waiting. Generals, politicians, scientists, all of them gathered around a massive holographic table displaying the ruins of the Dominion fleet. General Monroe, a hard-faced woman with sharp eyes, turned toward Ethan. "You actually did it." Ethan gave a tired smirk. "You sound surprised." The general ignored his sarcasm and focused on Lurves. Her expression was unreadable. "She's the one." Ethan nodded. "She's the reason we're still breathing." Monroe studied Lurves for a long time before saying, "And what exactly are we supposed to do with her?" The room went deathly silent. Ethan's blood ran cold. He knew where this was going. "She saved Earth," he said slowly. "She's not your prisoner." Monroe exhaled sharply. "That's not the point. She's the last living remnant of the Dominion core. For all we know, she's still connected to it." Lurves lowered her gaze, gripping the edge of the table. She had known this would happen. Ethan felt anger burning in his chest. After everything, After she had given everything, this was her reward. "You think she's a weapon," Ethan said coldly. Monroe didn't flinch. "I think she's dangerous." Lurves spoke softly. "She's right." Ethan turned to her, shocked. "What?" Lurves closed her eyes. "The energy inside me. It's fading, but it's still there. If someone tried to use it, to control it." She looked at Ethan. They could rebuild the Dominion core. The room was silent again. Ethan understood the fear now. This wasn't just about her survival. This was about ensuring the Dominion core never returned. And the easiest way to do that was to eliminate the last trace of it. A new future. The meeting ended without an answer. Lurves was placed under protective custody, but Ethan knew what that meant. They didn't trust her, and they never would. But not everyone saw her as a threat. As days passed, news of the final battle spread. Across the world, people began to hear about the alien woman who helped save Earth. Some called her a hero. Others whispered about executing her before it was too late. And Ethan, he made a decision. One night, as Lurves sat alone in her containment quarters, Ethan unlocked the door. She looked up, confused. "What are you doing?" Ethan smirked. "Giving you what you fought for." Her eyes widened. "Freedom." He nodded. She stood slowly, watching him. "And if they find out you helped me?" Ethan shrugged. "I've always wanted to know what it's like to be a fugitive." She laughed softly. It was the first time Ethan had ever heard her truly laugh. Then, without another word, she stepped into the night. Lurves, the last of her kind, the woman who had been created as a weapon, was finally free. And somewhere, beyond the stars, a new future awaited her. Ethan watched until she disappeared into the shadows. Then, turning toward the sky, he whispered, "Good luck out there." And with that, the story ended. Or maybe, just maybe, it was only the beginning.